Hello, welcome back to I Create For You. It's story time. And we're in the book called Ghosts of the Black Hills. Stories of spooks and spirits here in the Black Hills who haven't left us even after they have left us. And this one's called The Novel. Why do some folks return from beyond the grave while others seem content with their eternal rest? Could it be due to some task left unfinished when they were abruptly torn from this world? That would explain the strange tale of Melvin Cott and why he so stubbornly clung to his earthly existence after his death. Around 1905 or thereabouts, Melvin worked as an editor for a large city newspaper back east. It was a good job, but Melvin was restless. He was really a frustrated novelist at heart, but he was just too busy with the newspaper business to devote enough time to his literary endeavors. For years, Melvin had been hearing stories and reading accounts of the wild, exciting things that were happening out west. True, things had tamed down quite a bit since the 1880s, but places on the far side of the Mississippi still seemed a lot more interesting than where he happened to be. He was particularly fascinated by romantic lore of the Black Hills in South Dakota. Melvin just knew that the Black Hills was where he wanted to go to start a new life. The hills would be the setting for his novel. Melvin's wife, Carrie, strongly voiced her opposition. While she sympathized with her adventuresome husband, she was just too practical to imagine giving up their good life to go gallivanting off to some remote outpost like South Dakota. The very idea. But Melvin was adamant. "This is my last chance," he told Carrie. "If I don't go now, my dream of becoming a Western novelist will never come true." So when Melvin came home one day and announced that he had quit his newspaper job and was leaving for the Black Hills, Carrie was not surprised. She would go with him, but she wasn't going to be happy about it. The Cotts sold their house and most of their belongings and took a train to Chicago and from there into the Black Hills. Melvin was thrilled when he first saw the blue fringe of mountains and the thick, dark forest that covered them. Carrie just had to smile when she saw how happy her husband was. They got a little place just outside of Keystone, and Melvin started his novel. Things went well, and in no time he seemed like a new man. Gone was the dour editor shuffling off to his uninspiring job. In his place was a contented, enthusiastic writer doing what he truly loved. Even Carrie marveled at the change. Maybe, she thought, this move to the Black Hills would be a good thing after all. Melvin worked feverishly on his manuscript, and within 6 months it was nearly complete. In another week the last chapter would be finished. Soon he would deliver the fruits of his labor into the hands of his agent back east. But then fate stepped in. One fresh, bright morning, Melvin went into town to pick up a few supplies and go to the bank. He strolled through the front door of the bank and found himself smack dab in the middle of a bank robbery. Talk about the wrong place at the wrong time. The varmint who was shaking his gun at the teller when Melvin walked in didn't take kindly to the interruption. Maybe he was just naturally cantankerous, or maybe he was new at his profession and just panicked. In any case, he swung his six-shooter toward the unwitting intruder and pulled the trigger. A bullet through the heart that morning was a one-way ticket to the pearly gates for Melvin Cott. At that point, you would have thought that a promising literary career had been nipped in the bud and that Melvin's book was never to be completed. That's what Carrie thought as she stared bitterly at the unfinished novel there by her husband's typewriter. But even she had underestimated Melvin's tenacity. The night after the funeral, Carrie tossed and turned for hours before finally falling asleep. She dozed off for a few minutes and then would be suddenly jarred from her fitful slumber. Around midnight, she got up to get a drink of water, and as she passed a small study where Melvin had done his writing, Carrie stopped in her tracks. A bright bar of light was shining from beneath the closed door. The lamp on Melvin's desk hadn't been lit since his death, but somehow it was burning now. Who had hit the lamp? Who had lit that lamp? Carrie gingerly opened the door and entered the study. There was no one in the room, but she found herself shivering uncontrollably from a cold, mysterious draft that came out of nowhere. She put out the light and left the room. Back in her bed, Carrie pondered the strange situation with the lamp. She hadn't lit it, and she was all alone in the house. Or was she? The next night, Carrie awoke to a faint tapping sound. It took her a few moments to realize that it was the sound of Melvin's typewriter. Again, light was streaming from under the study door. It took some real courage, but Carrie opened the door and went over to the desk. She stared long and hard at that typewriter, not quite believing her eyes. Someone had begun to type the final chapter of Melvin's novel. Carrie returned to her room, this time leaving the study lamp lit. All through the night she heard the tapping of the typewriter keys, but she was no longer afraid. There was only one possible explanation. Melvin had somehow returned to complete his novel. Every day thereafter, Carrie would find a new page or two, freshly typed and stacked neatly with the rest of the manuscript. When it was finished, she gathered it up and personally delivered it to Melvin's agent. It was published and apparently was quite successful. Carrie explained to the agent that Melvin had completed it just prior to his untimely demise. She never did let on about the final chapter being done by a ghostwriter. That's a pretty good story. I wonder if it is true, and might have to look up that name, Melvin Cott, if that's what he wrote under, to see if there is actually a book out there by him. So I'm going to try, and I say try, to sketch a ghostwriter at a typewriter. Yeah, okay. Never say never, right? Okay, first, I'll do it this way. Gives me a little bit more room. I'm going to draw the typewriter. The best that I can, anyway. Hoping it'll look like a typewriter when I'm done. I like the old typewriters. I like the sound of them, basically. They do sound like, the clickety-clack clack. But, hey, that, like in the old movies when you watch them, if there's any out there that you can still watch them in, you see them, the news reporters, with, of course, the cigarettes hanging out of their mouth while they're clacking away on the typewriter. But you'd always see a whole pile of them in a rows on their desks and their areas, and they would be like trying to look all professional. And I don't know, I'm not going to do the exact amount. I'm just doing a roundabout the best way that I know how. This might not look exactly like a typewriter, but it's going to be close enough. But yeah, and it's funny because when you look back at the old movies, they are really smoking up a storm in some of those movies. It's kind of funny. Of course, my mom hated anything to do with cigarettes, and she had good reason to be justified at that. And in the end, because my dad passed from lung cancer from smoking. So, yeah, she was always on to him about stopping, and he just, you know, he had been smoking since he was 12, so it was kind of hard, you know, to kick the habit at that point. This is the thingy that where all these keys are in here. I don't know if you ever looked at an old typewriter. They always had these, and then these things would come up and clack at the paper. This is the ribbon going from one end to the other, and then this is where the letters would hit. I'm just trying to explain what where I'm going with this, because I don't know if it even looks like a typewriter, but that's the best I can do. Okay, now I know he had a study lamp, but I'm going to go for the spooky effect, and I'm going to put a candle right here. Okay, now I'm going to draw something spooky hovering over. Just hovering over, making like it's, I'm going to put it, I think I'll just put a piece of paper in here. I'm going to say that we're going to get rid of all this in the middle so that there is a piece of paper inside the typewriter. There we go. Simple as that. So much easier than actually drawing it. Okay, now I'm going to make weird, like ghostly fingers, like we're going to get that piece of paper out of the typewriter. Hope these make sense to you. It's just a good idea. I mean, since he didn't really physically manifest himself for her to see him, so I'm thinking, well, this is the next best thing, is to make just like a see-through hands. Ghostly hands. Just making it look like it was typed on. Alright, and then he would have like a stack of papers over here. On this side. And there's our ghostwriter. How's that? Not too bad. I'll go back out. That's our ghostwriter. I tried to use this reference. And there's Melvin typing away, doing what he loved to do. Thanks for coming along on this spooky story. And here comes our cat, who's going to take up the whole part here. Oh, I'm going to get him off. Oh, I'm so sorry about that. Now, let's get back to this. Thank you so much for stopping by and checking out the channel and checking out the story. And if you liked it, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe, comment, and I shall see you in the next video. I'm going to try to put a short up again today. And also, I want you guys to stay warm and have a great weekend. Bye bye for now.